Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you today. Very excited to bring back Dutch for his second go around. Taryn, I think you're on 3 or 4
Well,
now.
yeah,
I
we just said two more
can't
and I get a
remember.
free mug. So
Yeah, so
Nicely
I got a
done.
couple. Very excited to have you both. It's going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. So while I'm doing that, make sure y'all are doing this. Like the show, hit the subscribe button, do the notification bell, do all that good stuff so you get your emails in the morning whenever we go live, which is, of course, every day. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, by all means, put them up in the comment section and we will engage them directly throughout the day. I don't know if Winter Storm's joining us this early in the morning, but
Dude, it's too early.
it might be a little early. I
I'm
do
I'm a bit
appreciate
irritated that we're 2 hours early.
I do appreciate everybody joining us a little bit early. My son's getting a new jiu-jitsu belt, so I am going to be there rather than be on the collective. Just have to make sure that that is good
Ooh
to go.
yeah.
Look at that. Daniel Lamonte jumps in here and says, dang, new timing. I like it. Hey, all. So let's get into the conversation. Oh, and Taryn disappeared.
It's
So,
cool. He can come back to the conversation when he likes.
Well, and here's the
exactly.
beauty of it, right? Because you know how much of a gorilla I am, not guerrilla warfare, but gorilla, and so it's working for me. So we're not gonna, knock on wood on this one right now.
I
I
like
like
it.
it. I like that he screwed up first. I like that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's always good when somebody else screws up first. That way you don't look quite as bad. There he is.
Hey buddy,
Well,
just wanted to switch over to the left. No worries.
The it doesn't count coming back into the same conversation. Like you don't. That's not how you get
Yeah.
faster.
If you
well, I only
if
need
you
one more
bounce
visit.
in and
Okay,
out
gotcha.
2 more, yeah, it's not a free mug.
Well, today, so we are going to be getting into teaching versus coaching, and the reason I want to get into this is Coaches Week starts on Monday. So I want to get some definitions on teaching and coaching, and then I want to get your guys' discussion on that. So I'm going to reiterate a quick definition on teaching and coaching, and then we will jump in here. Unless anybody's got any other thoughts right off the bat.
roll.
Good to go? Okay, let's
Define.
dive in. Define. Here we go. Teaching. Definition of teaching in education. Teaching is the concerted sharing of knowledge and experience, which is usually organized within a discipline, and more generally, the provision of stimulus to the psychological and intellectual growth of a person by another person or artifact, which is quite interesting. And then the definition of coaching. Coaching is a form of development in which an experienced person called a coach supports a learner or client in achieving a specific personal or professional goal by providing training and guidance, which I think are both are really good definitions. But let's get some first thoughts across the board, Shaun. I know you're chomping at the bit to do this, so what do you got?
I don't have a good. I give this no thought, but as you were rattling off those definitions, all I could think of was, man, I've taught a lot of people a lot of things. I've also coached a lot of people, but they're way different. And those two definitions didn't really tease out the details for me anyway, in regard to how very different they are. So I'll just start off with this real quick. You can teach someone how to sharpen a pencil, but you can't really teach them how to write. You've got to coach them how to write. And so someone can sharpen a pencil all day long until it gets right down to a nub. And all they learned to do was sharpen away a pencil. But coaching someone is taking that pencil and helping them write the best novel of their life. That's what I think of when I think of coaching. Coaching is a way different thing than teaching. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I like it. Dutch, what are your first thoughts?
I like that a lot. If you could see my lips move at the same time you were saying that, I was picking up what you're putting down. So
Dude, thank you.
I think you're very welcome. I think, and thanks again for bringing me back on. I really enjoy it. So I think a coach could be a teacher, but I don't see very often a teacher is a coach, but they can be. How many times have you had a poor teacher? You know, you've had that guy or that woman who maybe he's the PE teacher, physical education in America. Maybe he's that physical education teacher, but he's also a history teacher. And, he's the slow, he's the example from I've just, somebody said just the other day, oh, you don't remember stuff when you talk about it. It's Ben Stein's character in the Matthew Broderick movie. When he's like Bueller, right? Ferris Bueller. Anyone here? He's so boring.
Right.
Nobody likes him. So you have this boring teacher who can't really. He's teaching, but he's not really doing it well. And I think certainly coaching and teaching have something to do with each other. There are plenty of guys that know how to do something because they were taught, either how to sharpen a pencil or they're taught how to do something. But can you coach that person to relate this task that you just been taught into a real life event? And that's what it's all about anyways, is real life event. I can teach you how to shoot a pistol, but can I help you translate that as a coach to be able to do the things you need to do in a tactical environment if you're law enforcement or military, to be able to use that tool, with discretion. So completely different, but and somehow related.
I like it. Taryn, what are your first thoughts?
Yeah, I think kind of, what everyone is kind of already saying similarly is a teacher is kind of going to give you a skill, and the coach is going to be able to kind of develop that skill set and teach you how to apply it to whatever discipline it is that you're doing. That's kind of what I think about it when teaching versus coaching. One's giving you a skill, and a coach can be the teacher too. I agree with what Dutch said. It doesn't always work in the opposite, that a teacher can be a coach, because I think we've all had, especially I think the military being a really good example of it, is it's so many different types of leaders, and everyone goes through their leadership course, and everyone's a teacher right away. But that doesn't mean just because you get that qualification does not make you a good teacher. That's for sure. So
100%.
I think,
Absolutely.
yeah.
100%. Now, quick couple comments. Steve Wilson jumped in here and said, "What a topic! My heart in a conversation." That's absolutely good to have you on here, Steve. Daniel says, "River Viking, is that the new library background that you got going on there?" Which is great. So my first thought on this first question, I guess, really is, I like the way you put it, Shaun, in terms of sharpening a pencil versus being able to use that pencil to write. Do you think that this is really just like coaching is like developing someone to be able to go beyond what they're taught? Because to Dutch's point, there are teachers out there that were taught how to teach from teachers who spent a lifetime teaching, who then were also previously taught by teachers who spent a lifetime teaching, but never really did anything else, right? They're reiterating the same stuff over and over and over again. Whereas a coach is somebody would help you develop that beyond that one skill set, that one scope, that one line of thought, I guess. Shaun, what do you think?
I think that was going to be my next point is teachers. I'm going to call them bad teachers, but it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're not able to translate what they should be translating into the individual in front of them. And so therefore their skill set is too narrow to be able to help the person in front of them enough to really make a mark like, wow, that was a good teacher. And the reason I'm thinking of that is because Dutch had mentioned that teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And that teacher is really deadpan. Like, I mean, he's got like almost zero emotion. He's got his big thick rimmed glasses. Bueller. He's like totally disconnected. Yeah, anyone. That's right. Totally disconnected from the class, though he's standing in the class, supposed to be running the class. And that's the thing of it, man. You can be up in front of the class in charge, but that doesn't mean you're in charge of the room that you're standing in front of. There's only one way to be in front of a room and in charge of it, and that's to have talent, to have skill, to have the ability to coach, I feel. I mean, teaching as a teacher to just teach is not enough for me. And that teacher who was doing the Bueller, he wasn't teaching. He certainly wasn't leading. And he was the furthest thing from a coach in that moment, other than to use as a perfect example of what to never be. And so that's the thing. There's teachers out there like the teacher in Ferris Bueller who set the standard as that's acceptable. And it's actually become quite prevalent nowadays where as a teacher, you can just show up and leave and not interact too much with your students. Now, I'm not painting every teacher with a big brush. I'm not saying everyone is like that. I'm just saying my general observations are that teachers are in the game to deliver a curriculum, but they're not there to coach. Maybe there was a time when they did, I don't know, not when I was a kid. Maybe there'll be a time in the future, maybe. But as I see it right now, teachers are teaching a curriculum and they're not investing in that curriculum to a degree where they're becoming a coach of the program. And again, I've established there's a wild difference between someone who teaches you 1 + 1 = 2 and someone who teaches you 1 + 1 = 2 and here's why it's important.
I like that. Dutch, any thoughts?
Yeah, 100%, brother. I'm right on time on your train. So, where does it all? What umbrella does it all come under anyway, right? I mean, the basis of the show today, your live show today, is coaching versus teaching or teaching versus coaching. But if they all fall under leadership, is what they do to me. If you're a good teacher, then you have leadership skills where you can be an actor, like you said. You have passion for the subject you're teaching, and then you have an empathy quotient that you can. Okay, this whole EP where I can go in. What do my students need? Why is he by himself? Why is she by themselves? What do we need? Same thing with a leader in a platoon, right? You have a platoon, give or take, in the United States Infantry is about 40 guys. Let's look at the example of leadership in Band of Brothers, and you have Lieutenant Sobel versus Lieutenant Winters, and you see really good leadership versus really poor leadership, and there's no empathetic quotient whatsoever. He's a tyrant. He says you do things the way you do them, and that's all there is to it. A bad teacher could be the same way, right? She or he says, no, this is the curriculum, just like Shaun mentioned. This is what you do. I'm out. I'm getting paid. See you later. I don't care about the human development of these people. In every organization, you need a teacher and you need a coach under the banner of leadership that brings them all together. And you see that with Dick Winters, I think, especially in the Band of Brothers series. And there's plenty of other examples out there. But that's what I would strive for any young man or young woman getting into the teaching and or coaching business. How can I best help inform these people? As a teacher, I want to see more critical thinking, right? So why is homeschooling so popular? I think is because the parents that can control what their children learn, but they can also do this in a critical thinking manner. There's plenty of curriculum out there that makes their children think in a critical thinking mindset. So if you did one paper on the benefits of smoking and you did another paper, you have to do two papers, one on the benefits of smoking, one on the difficulties of smoking, what happens to you. So, you get the idea, but that's, to me, all under the banner of leadership for those things that all come together.
I like that. Going under leadership. Taryn, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull from my real life experience right now, being 35 in university full time. I've got two classes that are almost identical. One is a Canadian version, and one is like a generalized version of a political science course. So I'm writing a paper. I send my prof my thesis and my argument, and that prof comes back with, this was great. This is why it was great. Here's maybe what I would change. Here's maybe what I would suggest you should do differently. Blah blah blah. Awesome. I learned a lot from that interaction. Now, flip side of that is I have other prof that I send him the same arguments and same thesis statement because I just lucked out and they're basically the same course. I'm do the same paper, and I send him that. I'm like, hey, can you just give me your feedback on it? Looks great, thanks. No feedback. Looks great, thanks. I'm like, apples and oranges here. These are two profs in the same university giving me completely different opinion and or lack thereof, right? So I think, like you said, a teacher needs a good teacher, good leadership, like we've identified as the common denominator here, is somebody who can advance that knowledge and make sure that you understand the why. I think that's really important. What Shaun said earlier, it's okay, 1 + 1 is 2, but here's the why. It's dead on. That's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I just want to hit this real quick comment. Steve Wilson jumps in here. He says, I strongly believe that our profession has lost its translation of topic into application because so many folks have lost their own personal sense of passion, drive, pursuit. So they become scared, anxious, tentative to believe that they can imply the applications on others. It's a really great. There's a great example of this within the military. Quite often, is you get if say a recruit isn't quite understanding the information, or they're not doing something correctly, and they're like, the next unit will sort them out. The next unit will sort them out, and just being like pushing it to somebody else rather than taking it on as your own issue. Definitely a leadership thing. Now, I have a question on Dutch. You had mentioned Lieutenant Sobel, Lieutenant Winters, and one was a tyrant, one wasn't. But there was also a scene in that show where I believe it was Nixon who was talking about, I had a school headmaster just like him. He's a he called him a genius in terms of how to band people together. So at times, wouldn't a tyrant be required? And I mean, a good coach is going to act as a tyrant at times, but also not. So I'm going to come to you on that one, Dutch. What do you think? Does it require a tyrant at times or not?
So no, I don't think it ever requires a tyrant. What it does require is a competent, passionate leader that will show you exactly what you need to do to get the task done. Not a man who stands. So Nixon was right. Why did Nixon say this? He said this in the dining hall because he said, "What man wouldn't march up Currahee 10 times or whatever just to piss in his coffee?" Hatred doesn't get you do what I ask you on the line. It's competency and the example that I've given you. So again, if one of those times he tells the man to go back up Currahee, but does he go with him? No. Oftentimes he's berating his men that are in full pack and uniforms when he's in like a dress uniform or at least a Class B type uniform. So you're not even doing it, bud. You're not even doing it with them. So don't give me that stuff. So no, I don't think it does take a tyrant. Now, 20% of your people are going to make 80% of your problems. So 20% of those people need to be dealt with harshly, but fairly, right? There's still, if you have standards in whatever organization you're in, right? I came from the United States Army Rangers and then beyond, we had a standard. If you don't make the standard, there's no magic formula here. If you can't make the standard, then you have to go somewhere else. So that's all there is to it. But at least you have to have that basis. There's plenty of places in the United States Army, I almost guarantee the Canadian Army as well, there is a standard, but somehow that guy, this girl, those people get away with it. And just like you said, Chance, they go off to another unit and somebody takes that problem. And what does that do to our culture? You see one guy doing very well or passing the standard, and then the other person who's supposed to be removed for not passing the standard continues to go. And they get paid just like the other guy, but he's not anywhere near doing the job he needs to do. So in my opinion, no, you don't need a tyrant. You just need somebody competent who understands the rules of the game, if you will, or the standards, and then applies those standards, as with I don't know, with not, we don't need to play favorites. Again, no magic formula. You can make the standard or you don't.
I like it. Taryn, any thoughts?
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, I was thinking about this in a different way. We were talking about coaching and teaching with people, but if you were to do this with an animal, for example, just like Dutch said, being a tyrant isn't going to work with an animal. You have to appeal to what gets that animal excited, because you can't verbally, they're not going off of what you're saying in the sense of they're looking for cues, they're looking for things that excite them. So if you're a tyrant to them, what's going to happen? Tail between the legs, then they're going to cower every time you walk in there and they want to do. So I think that principle of trying to appeal to an animal, with what gets them excited, is the same application you need to do with a human being. They're not going to, yes, they'll respond to it, but they're probably not going to respond to it the way that you would like to respond to the tyrannical direction. So just kind of keeping that in mind, I guess.
I like that. It's a great point. Shaun, what are you thinking?
Oh, I really like this because I do like Band of Brothers. And though I don't have a photographic memory, I mean, who doesn't love on Dick Winters? I mean, that
Yeah.
It's so crazy how they managed to capture such an amazing human in a movie. And so something that both Dutch and Taryn have now said was, it just got constantly reinforced as they were speaking. And the difference between the two officers was Dick Winters didn't have to say too much. He didn't have to talk a lot. He didn't have to raise his voice. He just had to look at you. He just had to give you that, you're kind of disappointing me, headmaster look. And not in that perfect way, but in a way that had his men responding to him without being a tyrant. And so how did he do that? Well, obviously through emotional intelligence. But it's, if you look at it, it's almost a case study of what intrigues some men, because Taryn had mentioned the feedback loop, as it were. And Dick Winters didn't give a whole lot of feedback loop. What his men had to do was start paying attention to Dick Winters. In fact, at one point, I think they had a little bet going, trying to figure out Dick Winters. And so I think that's part of it, man. Like, leadership shouldn't, or teaching someone and coaching someone. When you walk into your classroom and you see your teacher up front, you don't know anything about them if all they've ever said is Bueller, Bueller, Bueller. How do you connect to that? It's hard to invest in a classroom as a student if your teacher isn't investing in the classroom. If I'm not making the connection with the teacher, freaking, I'm bouncing. You're not going to get my $50,000 a year for a avatar up front. So if I'm paying good cash, I want to connect with that person on many levels. And I'm not saying that we have to hold hands and become best friends on day one. What I am saying is, you better start interacting with me, because I'm paying for that interaction. And by interaction, I don't mean come on over here and help me with my homework. I'm talking about do your job as a teacher and interact with the other humans that are sitting in that seat, that are at the bare minimum paying you their time, giving you their life in that moment. But maybe they're paying you in their time and they're paying you in cash. So that double payment is no joke. And I think that a lot of people out there that are in various teaching institutions have forgotten that other humans are investing a lot of time and money to sit in that seat and have an interaction. Not a slideshow, not a PowerPoint presentation, but where they connect with the person up front who is supposed to be teaching them, and let's not get crazy, and inspire them. That's what we're there for, to be, not to drone into the classroom, sit down, and then drone out of the classroom and not even know what just happened over the last 3 hours. It's supposed to make an impact. It's supposed to make us wiser. It's supposed to make us excited about being a student in life. And so if we're going to say that teachers struggle to do that, coaches cannot struggle in that area. Coaches need to put their hooks into a person as the person is putting hooks into them. And you need to stay connected to each other in that journey of student coach or athlete coach or shooter coach, whatever the passion is that someone's stepping into to be coached. As I see it, there's teaching, and coaching is a whole different thing and a whole different level, a whole different interaction, and a whole different vision. When I'm coaching someone, I'm not thinking about how do I graduate them out of grade 11 so that they can be passed on to grade 12 into a structure that is really confined and really streamlined. As a coach, I'm thinking wide and deep. And how can I help this person become more awesome? Not to just simply gap them up to the next thing, but to stand in the moment with them and observe or understand how much more they can expand in all directions. I'm not focused on grade 12. I'm focused on their life. And that, I think, is a really important distinction between teaching and coaching. Teaching is feeding someone up the pipeline. Coaching is making someone 360.
Good call.
Dutch, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think in the end here too, like teaching, you can see mass teaching on a scale. And I think that's just a normal picture that we see teacher students, right? You see one in front of 40, one in front of 50, one in front of 100 if they're professors at a campus. Coaching, how do we see that? just from the layman's point, don't we see one-on-one, don't we? Sometimes, maybe it's a professional organization, maybe even collegiate, whatever, but then it's 1 on 40 or 20, 30. I mean, how many guys make the roster? American football, like 45 people make the roster, give or take. But whatever, it's that's different. Plus, he has a staff of other coaches. There's one coach, and then there's a whole bunch of other coaches. So those coaches are all also available. Not only, I like what Shaun said, of course I do, but amenable, affable, approachable, relatable, right? All these things, not just part of the emotional quotient, but still, they're the person that allows the coachee or the student, in this case, even if it's a teacher, to be reachable. Like you said, you stand up in front of these people and you talk to them about a subject every day, or you take them outside and you do a thing with them every day. You want to get inside them. You want to see what makes them tick. You want to see what makes them get better. And so I think, again, back to the beginning, I think they can be interchangeable to a degree, but if we see them from the layman's or just a regular standpoint, one person's just standing in front of a bunch of people talking, or it's one-on-one training with you coach and students. So
I like that. Taryn, anything to add?
I think, like, what's the real difference between teachers and coaching? Like Dutch is saying, at a basic level, I would think maybe teaching more of setting, it's more curriculum based, whereas coaching is like, if you're coaching a team, you still coach an individual person, right? You're coaching them as a team as a whole. The coach should be individually tailoring something towards that individual. So I'm thinking, just at the generalized, teaching is more of a group setting where you're not really tailoring it to the individual's needs or however to inspire them, and the coaching aspect is now taking breaking it down into the individual and seeing what makes them tick and have them excited and inspired by whatever it was that they were taught.
Interesting. Now I have kind of just a statement here to see if this is what we need. Is that basically is a good teacher a coach? There's when I'm thinking about all the teachers that I've had over the years, and all the instructors that I've been under over the years, is that the people that really struck me as good teachers seem to be coaches, as to what you guys are talking about. They had an investment not only in the students but in the subject, in the whatever it is what they were teaching, and the benefit of their students in mind. So I'm wondering, do you think that to be a good teacher, you should aim towards being a coach?
Sure. Again, I think, to me, they're interchangeable to a degree. I think if you're a really good teacher, though, but how many of those students are you really coaching? That's the thing too, right? If you're established to get 40 people in your class, I don't know why I'm using 40 as a rubric, but give or take, it's the same as an infantry platoon. But if you're using 40, what? We good?
I said it's a good number. Yeah, keep it.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I was thinking right away there's something wrong with my mic again. So where are we going? Interchangeability. But okay, so if one teacher has 40 students, how many of those students can she really be a good coach to, he or she? It's not going to be 40. It's just not going to be. It just can't be. And I think to Taryn's point is, now you take that coach and they're just more specialized into a smaller group of people, 1-on-1, 1 to 5, 1 to 10.
I like that. Shaun, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, oh boy. I was thinking of a whole pile of ways to try to make this point without using myself as the example, but I'm going to do it. So here we go. So when I was younger and I was teaching computer system engineering, I was teaching day class, teaching night class, and also writing a book. And so in between my day class and my night class ended at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Night class started at 6 o'clock at night. So from 5 till 6, my day class students would stay an extra hour, and my night class students would show up an hour early. So my day class and my night class got to hang out for an hour. And what was cool about that is my day class were the hardcores. So I was running them from 9 till 5, like a freak. And so by the end of 5 o'clock, they were freaking frazzled, man. They were on fire, like needing a fire extinguisher. So they're that frazzled. But they'd stick around an extra hour. And the reason for that is because I just created a good environment, I think. I demonstrated that I cared. I wasn't teaching a curriculum. And the weird thing is, my entire program that I taught for those years, I self-designed it, self-created it on day one. I was looking at blank paper, thinking, how on earth am I going to teach people to be computer system engineers? So it was all self-developed. Every single day was delivered as a boutique day for my day class students, as it was for my night class students. But watching the two day and night classes hang out together and bounce ideas off each other, it was kind of like this. And I know this is going to be a crude example, but it was my night class students were kind of like regular infantry. And my day class students were kind of like special operations. Because the day class was like freaking hardcore, man. And they were on their game. They were sharp. I was creating my own version of special operations in that classroom, and I was pretty proud of them. They were pretty proud of themselves. So when my night student came in, and they'd see this, they would want to elevate their game. They would want to emulate what was going on. They would want to be part of that action, even though they were, quote unquote, just night students. And so I think there's a way to draw people together, even in just a single classroom, not requiring a day class and a night class to form the cohesiveness and also to illustrate that there's levels to the game. I think you can do that with any classroom. I think you can do it with any small group. I think you can do it with just a couple of people standing facing each other, is help them understand the difference between in the game and out of the game. So my day students were in the game. My night students were kind of in the game until they saw my day students who were mega in the game. And now all boats rise up. And so as a teacher, I think that you can deliver a non-passionate, structured course where you don't interact with your classroom and you simply deliver the product maybe per the standard, or try to keep it per the standard. And at the end of the year, you've created another 40 students that go into grade 12, and you don't know any of them. You might not even know some of their names. So that can be teaching. But coaching is having your day students and your night students hang out together because they want to be there. They want to stay extra. They want to learn more because they're digging the environment. They're digging the vibe. They are connected to the process. They have ownership in their own excellence. And that's a hard thing to create in a classroom or as a coach, unless you're passionate, unless you want the best for the people in front of you. I don't care who you are. And I'll say this categorically. I don't care who you are. You could be the most large and in charge person in the world. You could have a resume deeper than anyone on the planet. But if you show up in front of a bunch of people and you've become dispassionate, or you've forgotten how to engage with passion with people, then you suck. And I've seen it. I've seen people who have built resumes that are deep and impressive, but have been in the game too long. They've started to lose not their edge. They've started to lose their love for what they're doing. The passion for the coaching. To teach, you don't need a lot of passion. In fact, Bueller,
Perfect.
Bueller. You can be deadpan and completely disengaged, unaware of who's sitting in those seats in front of you. But as a coach, that is never going to fly. You, at the bare minimum, have to love on the people that you're working with.
Dropping mics for early in the morning. I like it. Taryn, you got any thoughts?
You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, I kind of going back and trying to strip it away even further. What is a teacher doing? A teacher is kind of, in my opinion, they're teaching you a specific subject or discipline, and they are measuring that success on whether or not you pass a test or an exam. Whereas a coach is focusing on developing your skill sets for the goals that you have, where that their measure of success is whether or not their client progresses or achieves the goal that they have. So just looking at it, unless the teacher is diving deeper into why the individual is taking their course or why they're there in the first place. I don't think that necessarily that it translates a teacher being a good coach. I think a good coach, well, I'm hoping that the coach that you have is, savvy in the discipline that you're looking to get better at, or the goals that you have. Do you think a coach can teach probably better than a teacher can coach? That makes sense.
I think so.
Stuart, my brain is slowly waking up.
No worries. Dutch, you got anything to add? It looked like you had.
I do. To me, everything comes under the banner of leadership. So to be a good teacher, you need to be a good leader. To be a good coach, you need to be a good leader. Oh, by the way, to be really good at all of those things, you really need to think about servant leadership, or being a servant as a teacher. So you're serving these young skulls full of mush on whatever subject it is: mathematics, history, English, whatever it might be, right? Composition, life skills, right? The coach, same thing. You need to be a servant to this person. How I see a guy, if I do a class of 20, I was just in Indiana recently doing close quarter battle teaching, and there's one guy, right? There's this one guy. I want to take him, but I would love to be able to take him and develop him even further, because he was extraordinary. He's a young ranger. And I want to see him do more and more and do better and better. He's the kind of kid you just want to stop what you're doing, grab him and say, come on with me. I want to show you something new. But it's, again, to me, you have to be a servant. You have to want to be amenable, affable, already said all that stuff, but you give it. You're giving it up. When you're passionate, standing behind the microphone talking about a subject, you want to sell too, right? You want to be a salesperson, and you need to listen to the why on why this is important, especially for you in this particular class. You're taking it because this matters. Enough of blabbing for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Are there any? I got a comment here and then a question, but any other thoughts before I move on?
Yes, I do, because I've found myself in this circumstance more than once, just as Dutch explained, that sometimes you get people in front of you that I don't want to say are extraordinary, but are beyond the norm, so that whatever it is, bam, that's interesting. And so once I see something like that, I do want to develop it. And I, I am serving in the moment. I'm serving the individual. If I can give them just a minute of my time, or if they'll just accept a minute of my time, if we see eye to eye on that minute, that entire 60 seconds is me trying to make them better. And conversely, they should be looking at that moment, expecting that the next 60 seconds is going to make them better. Now we're in a good relationship. Now we're in a good student-coach relationship where we both understand our positions, that I'm trying to do the best for you. You're trying to do the best to understand. And if you've got any questions, any retorts, any debates, and we'll do that for sure. We'll do that in the 60 seconds, or we can do it after the 60 seconds. But for now, we have to understand our relationship. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to be helped. And I've had to bring it down to a really crude level. I know there's way more nuance than that, and helping you, helping me, and these are maybe incorrect terms, but they're going to get the point across. So if you're a coach and you see that remarkable person, you're going to want to serve them if you're really passionate about making people better. But while you're doing that, you're freaking making yourself better. Now you're getting to work with new talent, and new talent can teach you new things. And so that's the important part. The extraordinary piece is something that is called extra for a reason. If our days are considered as ordinary, no matter at what level, if you're running the entire world as a massive genius, and every day is incredible, well, guess what? Now incredible, running the world incredibly, is now your norm. So the extraordinary part is when it's unique, when it's different, when it's, wow, what is even going on here? Look at that, how that young ranger moves. That is extraordinary. Look at how he thinks. That is extraordinary. As coaches, we all need that extraordinary from time to time. And so if you're running the entire planet awesomely, you need to bump into that extraordinary moment where you do have to do that target lock and think, I want to play with that. I want to help that. But in so helping, I'm going to learn something through this extraordinary moment that I can now skill stack to be able to help other people in the future. So again, I don't care how large and in charge you are in whatever industry it is, unless you're finding extraordinary moments to recalibrate your amazing trajectory, then you're missing out. So you've got to spend some time trying to identify extraordinary moments. Just like Dutch, he's been in the game long enough that that extraordinary individual just didn't like fall out of a tree at his feet. He probably started identifying it over the course of several hours to refine to what degree this person is, we'll call it extraordinary. That's what coaches do. We identify talent, we put an eyeball on it, we trend it out, we establish it is what it is, we'll call it extraordinary, and now you want to play with it. It's like a new Lego set, but it's good for them and it's good for us, and we should be seeking extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on that before we move on to the next thing? Okay. He's just dropping mics left, right, and center here. I'm gonna be all of my timestamps are of Shaun right now. No, no, it's all good. So I want to hit this. Steve jumped in here. He said, "Bang on, Shaun. Dutch is also correct. We cannot get them all. What we can do is create the community that makes the ones we can't get feel like they can't miss out. It's passive influence. It works. I like that, and I want to talk about that in a second here." He says, "Then they are much more likely to try us on. Slow play style. Eventually, we get them all," which is interesting. So I want to touch on this. I want to get your guys' thoughts on it, on passive influence. Is this something that you would, especially in a group setting, is this something you would create? Dutch, I want to start with you. What do you think?
Passive influence. So I like what you're saying, Steve, but I want to know, I got to know a little bit more, right? It's kind of like that tell me more moment, right? What we can do is create the community that makes ones that we can't feel like they can't miss out. Make the ones we can't get, feel like we can't miss out. You set up a rifle, set up a pistol, maybe your equipment, right? It's an 80% solution. What is my mission? What am I prepared to do? What do I have to do? Okay, fine. But the culture, I did a TTPOA, that's the Texas Tactical Patrol Officers Association podcast last year. We talked about the tribal setting and the ability to, bring a new mindset to a culture. And it takes some time, passive influence to a degree, but I think it's an everyday active influence constantly. When I was a platoon sergeant and a squad leader, a senior squad leader, when I was in 1st and 75th Ranger Regiment, I would write the schedule for tomorrow on a dry erase board. And I would also write a motivational quote every day. Was different. This could be passive because I didn't yell it down the hallway. I wrote it and then I left. And I went home, did whatever I do. And the kids go up and down the hallway who live there, the 30 kids that live there, whatever, 25. They see that every day. So I guess that's a passive thing, right? To maintain that culture, though, you come in, early, leave late. It's like the cap, right? The captain's the last guy coming off the ice, right? He's the first guy on the ice, last guy coming off. It's the same kind of thing with, I would hope, with human coaching in a group status or in a tribe. And so if that's some passive influence, that certainly does work. I do believe that. And then you create that culture just by maintaining that kind of thing every day, but it has to be consistent. You guys do a great job on the collective because you are very, very consistent. That's what has to be done. You have to be consistent. Otherwise you're not making a difference.
Absolutely. Taryn, any thoughts on this?
I mean, Dutch said it really well, but I think the overall arching theme that Dutch was talking about passively is being a role model. I think if you set the example of being a role model daily, day after day, eventually they will catch on. And if they are the extraordinary, they're going to bite because they want to be a part of whatever it is that you're setting the example to be. That's it. It's short and simple for me.
Shaun, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of being said, and I think the term that maybe some people will twig onto is leadership by example, or ownership by example. Using yourself as the example to claim ownership of what's going on in front of you, act accordingly, present a high standard, be a good leader, so that others around you can see how it can be done at a higher level. So as a teacher or as a coach, both of those two roles, you can act as a fine example of leadership by example through that passive effort. And I think that goes a lot further. Leadership by example passively goes a lot further than actively trying to shape a classroom or actively trying to shape a moment over several days. But the problem with leadership by example in a passive sense is it takes time. There's a timeline requirement. The day after day, week after week, sometimes month after month is required to establish that passive excellence as a leader or as a coach or as a teacher. And so maybe you don't have that time. And so if you don't have that time, well, now we're talking about a way more active teaching or way more active sort of coaching style. So I think that's really a timeline related thing. But again, it goes back to what the fellows were saying, leadership by example or a passive good influence within the class.
I like it. Steve Wilson jumped in afterwards and he said, bingo, our delivery is bang on steady every day. The relationship we build with the stuck students/participants is the passive part. They won't be able to deny our belief in them after enough time. So I think that's excellent. Now, the question I had is from a little bit earlier. Taryn, you had mentioned, you would want your coach to be, it's at least have an understanding of what it is they're coaching, right? Or have some experience in that discipline. But so I'm wondering, because teachers, you should be able to here's a teaching plan, go teach it. And okay, cool. You should be able to just slide into that slot and teach whatever it is that needs to be taught. But I imagine coaches can, but should they? Should they be able to have that skill set to be able to move from discipline to discipline? Or is it more of you need the depth of experience within any one of those silos to coach it? And Shaun, I'm going to come to you first because I like
Why not? I think I'd like to say this. There's no real hard and fast rules on anything that we've said today. So we've been making some generalizations and we've been kind of thematically talking about some things, maybe even a little bit theoretical. But the point remains that these are just generalizations. So anyone who's been listening to this, please don't think that we're establishing set rules on any of this teaching or coaching stuff. So with that in place, I'd like to say that coaching is levels to the game. So we've been identifying the difference between teaching and coaching, but within coaching, there's a stratospheric level that you can achieve that, I don't know, I've never achieved, but I'm sure some have, whereby you can coach anything. It doesn't matter. I feel that I'm at a point now in my coaching where if someone said, hey, Shaun, could you teach a class how to open a can of baked beans? I could do that for an hour, but it ain't about the baked beans. It's about me coaching that group in front of me to become more awesome in a whole pile of different ways, just through an organic conversation that has nothing to do with baked beans. And so if someone asks me to go and coach whatever, I feel pretty comfortable coaching it. I don't even have to know anything about the subject. I don't even have to be able to spell baked beans. But on the way there, I'll learn how to spell baked beans. And when I show up in the classroom, I'll have a can opener and I'll figure out the rest. Because if you've been in the game a long time, you don't need to know what you're teaching. And I know that sounds weird. What you need to know is how to coach. But they're not mutually exclusive. If you can become an amazing coach, on your way to the thing that you're coaching, you just have to understand what you're going to teach a little bit, because the coaching is what drives out the group in front of you. So now that's going to be a problem for Dutch, because maybe right now he's thinking, but hang on a sec, I've got decades of technical skills as a shooter and as a mover and as a communicator. And what you're proposing is coaching can kind of replace teaching skills or knowledge. That's not what I'm saying, of course. And I think Dutch understands that. But there is a difference between technical knowledge and experience and coaching. So if you can coach anything and connect that with technical body of work, well, you're going to be amazing in that classroom. But if you don't have all of that technical experience, if you have kind of a general framework of the subject, but you're a great coach, that classroom is going to be amazing. So the distinction I'm making is you can be the best teacher in the world and kind of a mediocre coach, and I'll take the mediocre coach because that's going to develop me as a human being rather than just develop me in the subject called social studies.
Interesting. Dutch, what do you got?
Sure, whatever he said. On top of that, you can be skilled at something and be asked to teach people how to do it. And how many people have you seen in your life? I'm sure you have. That this guy should have some knowledge, right? And he probably does, but he's a shitty teacher. Pardon me, he's a terrible teacher. He just can't do it. He's not good at interacting with other humans, trying to relate to them an issue or problem or a task that they need to do. They're just not good at it. That's happened before. It's going to happen again. Anywhere you put humans, we're all broken anyway. But that's a whole nother story. But that's it for on top of that.
Terry, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of Bill Belichick from Patriots. He never played football in his life, but he's number one ranked NFL coach in history. So I think you don't have to necessarily have the technical skills if you are a great coach. You can develop those individual people's goals to get them to what it is. I think, of course, experience and actually doing something will drastically help your effectiveness and your ability to convey what it is that you're saying. But a good coach doesn't necessarily have to have real world experience. If they're a good coach, they're going to figure out what it is that to be able to relay to you and how that will help you excel in your personal goals. I think that's the biggest thing about it is a coach is there to help to get you to the goals that you have, not necessarily be the best at teaching what it is that have the most experience in what it is that they're trying to help you achieve.
That is quite interesting. I ran into this with my uncle. I was getting back into riding because I had been many years, and I went down to the ranch, and he's been riding his whole life. So I was like, "Hey, man, can you give me some pointers just to, knock the rust off, and I can get back into being in the saddle, getting used to that again." And he was like, "Well, I mean, I guess." I mean, he's been in a saddle since he was a baby, and he's in his 70s now. He knows how to ride, but he's never taught it before. He's never sat down and thought about how to translate the information that he has to another person verbally. Now, he taught his sons how to ride by having them in the saddle with him, right? So there is this difference between not only having the technical skill, but the ability to pass on that information, which I think is a key point. Now, we are running out of time. I got to shut it down a little bit earlier today because I got to run, but let's, any other thoughts on anything before we move on? No? Good to go? Okay, so let's get some final thoughts then for the day, and we will call her a good morning. So, Taryn, I'm going to start with you. Any final thoughts?
No. Well, firstly, just thanks for having me on short notice, obviously, but this is an interesting topic. It's got my mind, thinking. I think the biggest takeaway for me today is you need to be a good coach. You need to be able to connect with the individuals and figure out what makes them tick. It's not just about teaching them the skills, but how to make them want to do those skills. It's one thing to teach them, but how do you get them to do it and enjoying it?
That is the trick. Dutch, final thoughts?
Finding a good coach can make a huge difference in whatever it is you're doing. And you'll know it when you see it. I, like Shaun, love the Band of Brothers examples, and all throughout there, Lieutenant Sobel's character only lasts for the first couple, 3 episodes, but then the rest of your examples really are Mr. Winters, and then you have poor leadership later in Baston, and then you have better leadership after Baston with Captain Spears, and also Carwood Lipton, right? He becomes a first sergeant, and then they give him a battlefield commission. So it's there's a great examples of leadership and all that stuff. But again, to me, leadership is the larger umbrella. Coaching and teaching have to have some of that in there, and you'll know when you get a good coach, because they'll make a large difference. And that's it.
Outstanding. Shaun, final thoughts?
I've said this for a long time. I've said it as long as my boys have been on the planet, and I'll say it until the day I die, that you can be a good coach or you can be a good teacher, but it's rare that you have a good coach and teacher. It's rare. It is just rare. I mean, I'm just saying it, and if anyone's offended by that, then screw you, because it's rare that you get a good coach and a good teacher, and it's so rare that when you bump into it, it's notable. And when it's notable, you need to sink your teeth into that and really engage with that person, because they're going to change your life. Decades later, you'll still be thinking about that amazing human being that was a great coach and a great teacher. They should become your new baseline, your new standard as to what you want in the future, what you expect. So the moment that you bump into a good coach teacher, it will leave a mark. But don't just appreciate it in the moment. Appreciate it years later to hold yourself accountable so that you can deliver the same for others.
Outstanding. Dutch, you got
I do
something
one more
else?
thing.
Yep.
Yeah, just one more thing. So this is Bob Nelson. I'm not exactly sure where this quote comes from, to be honest with you, but you get the best effort from others not by lighting a fire beneath them, but by building a fire within them. So it's something to think about there too.
Ooh.
Dude, I was going to say before we finish up, I know you got to go, Chance, but Dutch, I mean, my entire career, in any career that I've ever been in, I've never had a guy who would write a quote every day on a whiteboard. Definitely not in the military. And I don't know how common that is nowadays. But man, I've never seen it. And I would have been a huge fan of yours on the regular, just for the fact that you went the extra mile of putting a different quote on a whiteboard every day. We've been talking about things that for maybe some people, they feel that good teaching or good coaching is out of reach. It's not. Dutch gave a perfect example of demonstrating that he cared enough about his men that he would stick around a little bit, write a quote on a board, take the time to think about the moment, and then bounce. He wasn't hanging around leaning on the whiteboard waiting for the round of applause. He was passively leading by example and encouraging his men to be more awesome. And it's just tiny little things like that. No one has to change the gravity on the planet or the rotation of the earth to impress upon anyone how good you are, or how capable you are, or how much you care. It's just tiny little things. The right people will see the tiny little things and appreciate the moment for what it is. So kudos to you, Dutch.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shaun.
Yeah. That I was just thinking to myself how challenging it would be to write consistently every day a different quote, because it'd be easy enough to like have 10 or 15 quotes kind of in your head running around, but once you lose those, or once you use them up, then you're like, now you gotta research it, now you gotta look into it, now you gotta figure one out, you gotta start exploring more outside that realm in order to find those right things. And so every day that is That is a heck of a task. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's
but
easy
as
to
we
run out of
said,
ideas.
they're winning and Dutch is winning because Dutch
Absolutely.
is trying to provide excellence and he's making himself more excellent as he provides it.
I like it. There you go. Dutch, we don't make you feel uncomfortable right off the bat.
Humbled, man. Just humbled. No, thank you. Thank you. Humbled.
So I do really appreciate the conversation, guys. This has been awesome. Steve jumped in. He said, "Thanks, gentlemen." Sort of hammer the comments. You're all fired me up, which is
No, good, Steve.
That's the
You got to
plan.
have somebody in there, right?
Thanks, Steve.
absolutely.
Good man.
And the only point I really want to add on to this is, to that point, is this is what we try to do on the collective every day. We try to expand people's knowledge. We try to expand people's development. We try to pass on that information, but to light a fire in someone. I really love that quote, Dutch. I'm going to steal it and use it more often.
Steal it.
So as we all, learn the difference between coaching and teaching, allows us to build our understanding of how to be better within ourselves, which allows us to grow. And you can do that with us every day here on the collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.